You've probably had moments where you needed to do something simple.
Reply to an email, make a phone call, fold the laundry.
Nothing complicated, nothing that would take more than a few minutes. But you didn't do it. You thought about it, you knew you should do it, but you just didn't start. And the longer you waited, the harder it became. This isn't about laziness or procrastination in the way people usually think about it. It's about something more specific.
Your brain has a kind of friction when it comes to starting tasks, even easy ones. And that friction doesn't care how simple the task is. It cares about something else entirely.
Most people assume that if a task is small or easy, starting it should be automatic. But that's not how the brain evaluates effort.
The brain doesn't just measure how hard a task is.
It measures how much activation energy is required to begin.
And activation energy isn't the same as difficulty.
Activation energy is the mental effort it takes to shift from what you're currently doing to something new.
Even if the new task is objectively easier, the act of switching requires your brain to disengage from one state and enter another.
That transition has a cost, and your brain resists it.
Research into task initiation shows that starting something requires more cognitive resources than continuing something you've already started. Once you're in motion, momentum helps.
But getting into motion in the first place requires overcoming inertia.
And your brain is very sensitive to that initial demand. So when you're sitting on the couch scrolling, your brain is in a passive, low-effort state.
Starting an email, even a short one, means shifting into an active, decision-making state.
That shift feels bigger than the task itself.
And because it does, your brain delays it. Let's say you need to send a quick message to a coworker. It would take 2 minutes.
But you've been reading articles for the last 20 minutes, and your brain is comfortable in that mode.
Switching to writing, even briefly, feels like an interruption. So you tell yourself you'll do it in a minute. And then another minute. And the task that would take 2 minutes to complete ends up lingering for an hour.
Or think about someone who needs to wash a single dish.
The dish isn't the problem.
The problem is that washing it means stopping whatever else they're doing, standing up, walking to the sink, turning on the water, and engaging with a task that has a clear beginning and end. All of that feels heavier than just leaving the dish there. This is why simple tasks can feel harder to start than complex ones.
A complex task that you're already engaged in has momentum. A simple task that you haven't started yet has none. And without momentum, even the smallest action requires effort to initiate. Your brain also resists starting tasks that don't offer immediate rewards. Scrolling gives you instant feedback. Every swipe shows you something new. Sending an email doesn't give you that. It's a task with a purpose, but the reward is delayed or abstract.
And your brain is wired to prefer immediate, tangible feedback over distant, uncertain outcomes. Studies on motivation and decision-making suggest that the brain constantly evaluates whether the effort required for a task is worth the reward it will produce.
For small tasks, the effort feels disproportionate because the reward is often just the absence of the task. You don't gain anything. You just stop having to think about it. And that's not a strong motivator in the moment. Here's the uncomfortable part. The longer you avoid starting, the more mental weight the task accumulates. It starts as a simple thing. But every time you think about it and don't do it, it becomes associated with guilt, frustration, or avoidance. The task itself hasn't changed, but the emotional context around it has. And now starting it means confronting that context too. This is why a task that would take 5 minutes can feel overwhelming after a few days. You're not just dealing with the task anymore. You're dealing with how you feel about not having done it yet. And that makes the activation energy even higher. This doesn't mean you're broken or that your brain is working against you. It's just doing what it's designed to do, which is conserve energy and avoid unnecessary transitions. The problem is that what feels unnecessary to your brain in the moment isn't always unnecessary in the bigger picture.
The brain doesn't naturally prioritize future benefit over present comfort.
It prioritizes what feels easiest right now.
And starting something, even something simple, doesn't feel easy when you're already settled into doing something else.
This also explains why some people can start big projects more easily than small tasks. Big projects have enough weight and significance that the brain recognizes them as important.
The activation energy still exists, but the perceived value is higher.
Small tasks don't have that weight. They feel trivial. So the brain doesn't treat them as worth the effort of switching. The real issue isn't that you can't do simple things.
It's that starting them requires a mental shift that your brain resists, regardless of how objectively easy the task is.
And because simple tasks feel like they should be easy, you blame yourself when you don't do them. But the difficulty isn't in the doing. It's in the starting. So if you've ever felt stuck on something small, this is probably why. You're not avoiding the task because it's hard. You're avoiding the transition.
And your brain treats that transition as a cost, even when the task itself is almost effortless.
Understanding that doesn't make it go away.
But it does make it less confusing.
And sometimes, that's enough.